ready to begin?
We are ready.
Okay, it is 6:30 p.m. and we are calling to session regular city council meeting for the city of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, October 20th. We are starting 30 minutes late because we had a internet outage in a portion of the city and it took 3 of our council members offline. Those 3 council members have repositioned and they are now at City Hall where they do have internet access. For any of our residents or any community members who are attending tonight and you just want to listen and you do not have computer access, not a problem. You should be able to dial in and listen. If you're dialed in and you need to speak, if you would please make sure that you jot down the city administrator's cell phone number and you can send her a text message to communicate if and when you want to make sure that we recognize you to speak. In order for me to allow somebody who's dialed in by phone, I have to unmute the entire meeting. And I don't want to do that unless I have to because it tends to create a bunch of background noise. And so with that, I will start the meeting with item number 2, which is citizen and public communication. So if there's anybody in attendance who wants to speak to an item that is not on the agenda, or if you want to speak to an item that is on the agenda, but you think you might not be here when we get to that item. I see 2 hands. Charles Goyette, you have the floor.
Good evening. I would like to talk about the postcard many, perhaps most, maybe almost all the residents in the city received over the weekend entitled, "We Are a Community." First, I've never experienced a political ad of this type in the 18 years that I've lived here. In the past, I would receive a postcard or a flyer from the candidates running expressing their personal campaigns, but never have I witnessed others sending political ads for candidates in the style of a political action committee. Secondly, the postcard wasn't about community at all. That would insinuate inclusivity, which was not the message conveyed here. Rather, it was more a political hit piece, in my opinion, against 2 currently elected officials running for re-election. For what it's worth, I don't agree with anything said on this postcard. I served 1 term on city council from 2004 through 2006. And I can assure you that our city government at that time was not a government that I would want to return to. In fact, it was just the opposite of all the glorious attributes that we apparently are missing in our current city government. Sure, there's plenty of room for improvement, but it's important here for me to say that I served on a city council whose mayor is part of the committee that endorsed this campaign ad. I can assure you that city government then was more controlled. It was more top down. It was less all-inclusive than our current city government. And it was all about business. The business of suing the city of Austin and Lowe's for reneging on the terms of Sunset Valley's land giveaway. The passage of a planned unit development ordinance for the villas, which violated the spirit of our city's master plan, which was later renamed our comprehensive plan, and the development of our 3rd shopping center. I'm not going to endorse any candidates here. That wouldn't be appropriate. But I had to express my objection to the We Are the Community campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Johnson, you have the floor.
Hi there. Thanks so much. And I'll try to keep it short since everybody's had to figure this out tonight. I was just going to make a quick comment that will be coming up in the Public Works report about Sunset Valley Nature Watch. I created a little information sheet and I hope all the council members were able to have a glance at that, or Carolyn will be giving more information shortly. Mainly, I'm just asking that we are given the ability to move forward with this volunteer program. We're really excited to get started and we're hoping to have our first opportunity for volunteers in November. Specifically, we just want to get permission to do a call for volunteers in the city newsletter, but we wanted to make sure that we had the blessing of council before we move forward on that. So I just wanted to highlight that one item coming up. Thanks so much.
Hi, Catherine, can I ask a question?
Of course.
It sounded like you said we maybe should have already seen it. Is that something that council members should have already seen? And if so, we want to make sure, because I don't know that I know what you're referencing.
Well, I guess we'll have to double check. That is something that after our planning and environmental committee meeting, I created that evening and sent it to Carolyn the next day.
Okay.
And my understanding with through the discussion with Carolyn and Sylvia in that meeting was that it was going to be shared with council members so that you could kind of get, instead of doing like a formal long presentation, I just did kind of a fact sheet so you could get all the info in one place. So you might not have had a chance to see it, it sounds like.
Okay, great. So then, and so this was from the last P&E meeting, and the P&E committee is looking for council to acknowledge it to some degree before you put it in the newsletter. Is that right?
Yeah, Sylvia asked us also to go that route, just to be sure that she wasn't being asked to put something in the newsletter that kind of didn't have your permission.
Okay, great. And so Sylvia, is that something that's in the purview of one of the admin reports tonight, or would that be for the next council meeting?
It's going to be in the public works report here.
Okay, great. So is that something that council can give their directive or whatever acknowledgement you're looking for? Can they give that to you tonight?
Sure. The issue the last time was the residents had gotten together for the shop Sunset Valley, and there was an objection that was raised by a council member that it was during COVID and we didn't want to be encouraging those kinds of things. So similarly, because we're still under COVID restrictions, I just wanted to make sure the council saw it. It is a very benign project. It is in the outdoors and actually assisting staff in the green areas.
Okay, so then council members, when we get to that portion of tonight's admin report, if you all feel comfortable giving the blessing, and if not, the other opportunity, if we do have a called meeting next week with the marketing firm, that might be another opportunity if you prefer to have more time. Catherine, was there anything else that you wanted to say before I move to the next speaker?
I guess my hope is that if at all possible we're able to move forward after this evening, that would, I believe, give us enough time to get it out in the upcoming newsletter, since we're trying to get volunteers for November.
Okay, great. So council members, preferably tonight so that it can make it into the next newsletter. When does the next newsletter go out, Sylvia?
On the 23rd.
Of this month.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks.
At this time, I don't see any other hands raised. Again, I want to make sure to be sensitive to anybody who might be dialed in by phone. Sylvia, would you hand off your cell phone number one more time just so we have it?
Yes, it's in the chat feature as well. It's 361-537-7468.
Okay, and so that's the number you can text this evening. If you're on phone or for some reason you're someplace where you don't have an internet connection and you're just dialed in by phone, you can text that number to let the city administrator know if you want to speak to an agenda item. You could also give her a heads up, which is what Joe Koizen did last week. So if there's an item, you can just say, hey, please let the mayor know that when we get to item number whatever, that I wish to speak if and when we have citizen comment. At this time, if there's anybody else who wants to speak during citizen comments, if you would please raise your hand. And then Sylvia, let me know if anybody has communicated with you.
No text so far.
Okay, great. And I did see Miles's hand go up and then down. So Miles, please raise your hand if you did want to speak during citizen comments. And one reminder, it's been a long time since we've been in chambers, but a reminder to people who do come, you have 4 minutes during citizen comments. If there's ever a concern that an item is going to pass on consent, which is possible, or that we might not get to an item if it's later down on the agenda, or there also are occasions where we have an item that doesn't get to the point where it's worked out enough to even have potential action or for council members to request citizen input. So certainly the idea is not to minimize the opportunity for people to speak. So if you have concerns that you really want it to be known, you could use your 4 minutes at citizen comments. And then if and when we get to that item, you also get the opportunity to have another 4 minutes if and when we get to that. Okay, so I think I've hovered there long enough and haven't heard anything. So now let's move on to item number 3, our reports for the evening, starting with the mayor's desk. And Sylvia, if you can pull that up. And I'll try to be slightly more verbal this evening, since it sounds like we may have some people who are dialed in that normally would be logged in. So for anybody who is looking at the tab 1, which is where I used to put items that I was personally working on, either with council members or staff, things that weren't yet to the point of being agenda ready or prioritized by council. So if you look, I now have this fully prepared to be transitioned over to the next mayor, since this is our last official regular called meeting. And I'm basically considering everything here a potential item for prioritization in 2021. So I would consider this, if somebody were to ask me, what did you guys want to touch on, either one or all council members that just didn't get finished or addressed, it's on this list. But the heads up to anybody who looks at it, that does not mean the next council will want to prioritize it. One of the first orders of business that will happen with the new council is that they will have a retreat where they discuss and prioritize what they want to be their working starting menu of stuff, which of course shifts and grows. Biggest example this year was that when we went to our retreat, we of course had no way to plan or anticipate that we would be dealing with all of the COVID issues this year. So even though council will prioritize, it will shift and change as the year goes on, and as committees and residents bring other issues and applicants come to the city with other issues. There are a handful of items that are yellow, and they are lines 5 through 8. Farmers market history and uplands summary, tax revenue, and traffic survey. Hopefully the traffic survey is approved. The staff recommendations are approved tonight. I will then link all of those documents in the next 24 hours. If you click to agenda planning, you can see it's ready to just be shut down. So I've left it up so that people can still see the dates that are going to come between now and when we do our transition, and also to show dates that have yet to be scheduled. So those are things that the next council, probably almost immediately in their first meeting or two, those are the dates that they will set. My plan is to keep this dashboard live. And so even as a resident, the idea is that I would keep this live and continue to share it with residents. So if you have the link, you can keep the link. I will just change the name so that it has an appropriate title, but continue to use it as a working document that I share with residents. And with that, let's move to our staff reports. And Sylvie, let's start with yours. Yep.
There's a little bit of delay with sharing screen. Okay. So the first item on the agenda is discussion of some administrative things and pretty important things. So election day, folks may not be aware that City Hall will be used as an election location on November the 3rd. We have worked out a traffic plan and are coordinating with Travis County on the logistics of that election day. Essentially one way in, one way out, spacing. PD will be monitoring the traffic. They will, however, not be around City Hall, as we don't want to intimidate anybody and feel like they can't vote. Marketing update. We sent out homework to all of the council and the staff, and it's due today. Gives me about a day to compile that and send that over to Ampersand. We do have a special called meeting for next Tuesday. Again, similar to the last meeting, 6 to 8, to cover the information that was received and proceed to the next steps. Some of the information that's required from council is really feelings and what your particular thoughts are for moving toward the next steps and before we begin to engage the community. And I've had some questions about employee evaluations. Given that my evaluation is on tonight, they wanted to know when the employees' evaluations were. We revamped the employee evaluation, and that was approved by council a few months ago. And essentially it gives the employees now the opportunity for a 360 eval and to provide some input on how they feel their participation in the city could be better improved. We do have the committee volunteer forms that are out. We're requesting those due back by November 13th. That gives the newly elected council an opportunity to review those applications before we go into retreat and begin looking at committee makeup and structure. We did receive several very good candidates for Public Works Director. I am meeting with the chair and 2 sitting council members. We are beginning those interviews on Wednesday and wrapping them up on Friday. And the goal is, if we need a second interview, we will move into the following week and hope to have an offer extended by the end of the month with a start date of November. Topic that's really, really, really hot right now, sign enforcement in the right-of-way. So we've been doing weekly review, and I personally did not realize how contentious a topic this was, simply because I'm on the administration side and I disconnect from the political side. And it had nothing to do with the national election, but rather complaints that had been received by my office and by staff regarding signs, specifically all kinds of signs, not just any one particular sign. That and the fact that we do have a mowing contract that's going to begin, and they will be mowing in the residential right-of-way. Staff has since informed me that there are some residents who have things in the right-of-way that we normally go around, or we make a special effort. Because we have a third-party contract, that's also something we need to discuss in the future. For now, the sign enforcement is going to be on an individual basis, and we will be giving those folks who are in violation 30 days to remove the signs out of the right-of-way, which takes it past the national election and anybody's feeling that there was an attempt to side one way or the other. Didn't have any resident information requests this past 2-week cycle. We do have a CED meeting coming up on 10/21. They will be wrapping up their work as directed by council, and also beginning to talk about the volunteer appreciation that was directed by the council. Budget and Finance Committee will also meet on 10/29, also wrap up and begin their work toward the investment policy and wrap up some end of year financial reports that are homework essentially for that committee. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I have one question, and then I see Councilmember Gonzalez has her hand up also. For the marketing, the homework has been sent out. When is it due back to you from council members?
Today.
Okay, so I think we're probably all going to need an extension on that. So council members, can we say by end of business tomorrow?
Yes.
And okay, and so council members, we've all now been given an extension. You have until end of business tomorrow to submit your homework. And I assume marketing firm is going to continue whether we have submitted our homework or not. So if you've already submitted it, thank you. For those who haven't, you've now got a 24-hour extension. And then I did hear Councilmember Gonzalez, or not Gonzalez, Medicus, it sounded like maybe she didn't know we were tentatively scheduling a meeting for next Tuesday. So council members, we're tentatively scheduling a meeting for next Tuesday. That will be published this Thursday. And so that's next Tuesday, currently for 6 to 8. And then depending tonight, if for some reason we don't get to executive session since we started 30 minutes late, I would propose, we don't need to make the decision now, but as we get closer to 9 o'clock, if we need to, we could have tonight's executive session at the end of that meeting. So we could do the marketing work from 6 to 8, and then we could do our executive session from 8 to 9. Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The first one is which are the council members who are involved with the engineering RFP?
The engineering RFP or the public works director?
I'm sorry, the public works director.
Rudy and Wanda, as well as Randy.
Okay, and I would like to know why I was not included in that as the public works liaison.
Because you are an exiting council member, the mayor was not included either. And I spoke to the chair and the mayor pro tem, who's Wanda, and that was the most appropriate course of action.
Okay, well, I as the public works liaison object, and I'd like my objection noted.
Duly noted.
And I think that was wholly inappropriate for me to be cut out of that cycle.
Councilmember Gonzalez, did you have something else?
Yes, then I'd also like to talk about the signage. The second thing that I would like to, and I'd like the city attorney to weigh in on that as to the appropriateness of that when someone on a committee is cut out of their process. Actually, I'd like to do that first.
And Roxy, you could weigh in here. So I would add that Sylvia did ask me, and I actually pulled myself out. So I actually don't know if the protocol for posting a job position involves the committee or the committee liaison at all. It may be something that we pull people in because we want to, but the posting of a job, once it's been approved by council, I don't know that it requires any involvement from committee. What I did do was I elected to remove myself for the reason that Sylvia just said. So when she asked for my input, I said, please pull Wanda in because she's mayor pro tem, and pull Wanda in because she will be here post-election, regardless of who is elected. So I actually, in an effort to be transparent and to have a proper transition to the next mayor, I chose to remove myself from something that I otherwise would have had the right to participate in. And Roxy, by all means, weigh in if you have anything to add.
I don't have the information that I would need in order to make that legal assessment right now, but I can look at it.
And I think it's just who is required to be involved when a job posting is made. And Councilmember Gonzalez, do you want to finish your items? Because we do have another council member who wants to speak.
Yes, I do. The next thing that I want to speak about is I'm also going to put this in terms of the minutes, but the last council meeting, my mic was cut as I was trying to ask for residents' input on the sign issue, and I was also told by the city administrator that we'd be able to talk about direction before my mic was cut about the signage where we give actual citizen direction on the website where it says the appropriate way to get signage on the right of way, and I was told that we couldn't just put it in there. We had to have council direction, even though it's supposed to be a comprehensive thing. It doesn't even show the legal way for citizens to get signs in the right of way, and I was told that it required council direction to add that. So and that we could have that discussion during a city council meeting. So I'm now trying for the second time, since my mic is not cut this time, to have that discussion.
So my understanding on this, Councilmember Gonzalez, is that you may be misinterpreting what was told to you. It's not council direction. And Roxy, I need you to weigh in on what I'm about to say. The mayor does not have the authority, neither does the city administrator, to change the city's rules. The current city rule is no signs in the right of way. Now, if we want to change the ordinance, that's not something where council can direct it. Council would have to actually post it as an agenda item. Somebody would have to sponsor it and say, we want to create some sort of new allowance or change the ordinance. That is not what we had at the last meeting. This issue.
Mayor, I think you're not familiar with the ordinance.
Well, I'm basing it off of not what you have said or what other residents have said. I'm basing it purely off what the city attorney posted and informed all of us as a group. And again, that's where I could be wrong. My understanding from our current city attorney is that the city rules do not allow residents to put signs in their private property, in the city's right of way that is in front of their private property. And from there, I don't have a dog in this hunt at all, which I also made very clear when I did the interview with KView. It has turned into melee, and I think it has a lot to do with the election. Roxy, from here, you should probably take over and have a conversation with Melissa that is responsive to her questions.
Yes, I did look at the issue when it came up, and I provided a memo that I believe was circulated to everybody. And the way that the land development code regarding signage in the right of way reads, it says that no sign, no matter what it is allowed in the right of way. And in fact, the only thing that is allowed are governmental signs. Governmental signs being signs put up by the city, such as no parking or neighborhood watch or things like that. And there is no process or procedure by which to get any kind of license or approval or permit to put something like that in the right of way provided by the land development code. And then I also found that the violation of putting a sign in the right of way amounts to if I recall correctly, a misdemeanor. I don't have it in front of me. But if there is if the council wants to deliberate, consider, and change the ordinance, then that would have to be an agenda item and follow the process as you usually do in changing the ordinance.
Let me just be clear, because I know that in the past, especially during a political campaign, that there was a form that we filled out that allowed us, if we said where it was and how many signs we were putting throughout the city in the public right-of-way, that if we filled out this form at City Hall, that we were, and we got it approved, that, and I'm pretty sure it was an administrative approval, that we were allowed to post said signs. And is that not the case?
That is not what the ordinance says. And I don't know when that happened and when the land development code regarding signage in the right of way was last amended. I need to look at that, but I don't, everything that I reviewed says that there's absolutely no signs in the right of way, and that a violation is a misdemeanor, and there is no process by which you can request permission to do that.
Okay, and another resident said he had done the same thing for his that he had filled out of a form for his for sale sign. So that's a more recent one. My memory from when we did that was before the advent of the city administrator. As a matter of fact, it was a campaign against having a city manager. And so I know that that's when it existed for then. But then I heard recently from a resident that he had filled out some paperwork. So, all right, well, I
have not been presented with any of that information. I looked at what the ordinance and our laws state, and the processes that it provides.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
And I would add, I don't recall the first thing that Councilmember Gonzalez mentioned, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm not somebody who's ever requested or asked for that. This is, again, not an issue for me personally. I did have a conversation with another resident just in the last 2 weeks where I admitted I'm not familiar with our special, my understanding was that maybe we had a special use permit, that we had a process that applied to real estate signs. And the resident was quick to show me that even my own understanding of it was rusty and not completely accurate. So Roxy, that might be one place for you to look, is to see where we do allow process variance, and if it applies just to real estate signs or what, to what it applies to. But the overreaching point that you made that I agree with is this is an issue council should take up post-election. And they should look at it in a comprehensive way that allows public input and time to consider what the city wants moving forward. Councilmember Reitz.
I did not mean to raise my hand, sorry.
Okay, and Councilmember Gonzalez, did you have something else? You had those two issues. Did you have another issue that you wanted to discuss related to the admin report?
No, thank you.
Okay. Council members, do we have any other council members who want to speak to the admin report before we move to the police chief's report? And so Chief Carter, oh, sorry, Carolyn, I see you were ready. Actually, since your report's up, Carolyn, do you want to do the Public Works report next?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. There's a few things we did a little bit longer Public Works report this week that I kind of want to highlight. So first thing is talking, dovetailing with what Catherine Johnson was saying earlier. In the Public Works report, we do talk briefly about the Sunset Valley Nature Watch. And the flyer that she mentioned is attached in that Public Works report. It's a few pages down. Really nice flyer that Catherine and some of the Nature Watch people coordinated to put together to kind of, get an idea of what it is they're trying to do. So they've got they're breaking the conservation up. We're breaking them into the 5 major areas. They're going to have some volunteer coordinators for each area. And just to help with picking up litter, inventorying flora and fauna, land restoration, reporting events, things like that. It's basically taking what was the conservation rangers and reinventing them as Sunset Valley Nature Watch. And the volunteers will be given instructions from the coordinators. They'll be coordinating with me what to do where in some of these areas. And one of the things they're wanting to do, their first kind of activity, beyond doing just a call for volunteers and people who are interested in working in these nature areas and in the green spaces and conservation areas, is to have basically their first kind of volunteer event would be a litter pickup where people could just go out and pick up litter in some of the green spaces and just help, patrol the green spaces and that. So that is the first item that is on the kind of Public Works report. And then the next item, we talk a little bit about a few different activities that we're looking at in the Public Works Department. This includes the AISD Master Meter Project. I did a little bit of information on that. And really what it says is that there's a lot more information that we need before we can make any kind of recommendations to move forward or what needs to happen. So I kind of detailed some of the information that we would need to make that, to be able to provide that information to council to make a very informed decision on what to do next. I also put in some of the background information about the lift station, what a lift station is, what a lift station does, what are the issues that are facing the Sunset Valley lift station, and what are some of the possible solutions to that. And so that's in there, and we'll be taking, and we met with Tom Turk, who's one of the city engineers for Sunset Valley, kind of went over a lot of this, and we'll be bringing some information forward to the Public Works Committee to kind of get that project moving forward. The next thing we did, we have no updates currently on Chasco. We are waiting for them to come back to do another round of another meeting to talk about what the next steps are. And finally, we talked a little bit, I put a little bit in there about the master meter analysis. And what the master meter analysis is that's where we take and determine water loss. And that's taking those the big entry point meters into the city and comparing it to what comes out of all the sub meters throughout the city. And so Daniel and I have been working pretty hard looking at those numbers and how they've been compiled and what's making sure that we're getting a really good analysis and all the data that's going into these analyses are good. And actually what we're seeing is that in the couple of months that we've kind of reviewed and looked is that water loss is actually looking a lot better than it had previously. And that there's a lot of factors that go into that. Better, we've changed out a lot of meters, gotten rid of a lot of the older meters. We've also kind of upgraded our meter reading operations and also the data entry, looking at how the data is being entered into the systems. So what we're planning to do is to get a full analysis of that information and be able to provide it to council, and also talk about and we'll be taking this and talking about it with the Public Works Committee too, about what the next steps are and looking at, what we could do with an automated meter reading program and how that could really save the city as far as water loss and being proactive in meter and water leak detection. And so those are the main items. And as you can see, if you go down, the Nature Watch flyer is there. And I'd really appreciate to hear what council thinks of that and have any direction from council, and be here to answer any questions that any council members may have.
And so this is where I'd redirect to the comment that Catherine Johnson made. So council members, I don't see an issue if Carolyn and Sylvia don't have an issue. Council members, are there any concerns about posting the volunteer program through the P&E committee in the upcoming newsletter? And or are there any other questions about the Public Works report? And Miles, now for the second time tonight, I've seen your hand go up. So it went up during citizen comments and then it went down before I got to you. I also saw it up a few minutes ago. So if you're wanting to speak to the right-of-way issue, even though it's not an agenda and council's not going to be taking any action, please raise your hand so that I make sure to capture your comments. Councilmember Medicus.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to thank the P&E committee for taking the time. It's been a while. They've been working on changing the Conservation Rangers group into the Nature Watch, and they've done a great job. I think it's a really wonderful way for, especially with COVID, for us to social distance and still work together to make our community more beautiful and keep the litter out of our green spaces. So I want to thank them, and I would encourage us to allow them to move forward with posting this. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with that. And I feel like we have more, I've seen more litter lately than I've seen ever. So I think anything where residents are wanting to help with that is greatly appreciated. Councilmember Gonzalez, you are self-muted, but you have the floor.
Thank you,
There you
Mayor. I agree with you, Councilmember Medicus and the mayor, that this is great work on the P&E committee's part, and I'm happy to do that. But I want to highlight, so it doesn't get lost, and Carolyn, I'd like you to back me up a little bit. In my conversations with Daniel and Carolyn, we're almost at no water loss, and I think that that's an important thing to say. But they only have like 2 months of data because it's very time intensive to get all this compiled in the report. Carolyn, am I saying this accurately?
It fluctuates. So we have May and June's water loss data. So May actually shows a gain of water. So it's like we sold more water than we actually took in. A lot of that has to do with timing of reading meters. And then there was about a 5% loss in June. So once again, if we take into account like meter reading and how we read meters, we could account for a lot of that in that kind of process as well, because we cannot read the master meter simultaneously with all the other meters when we are reading individual meters. So it's looking pretty good, really, really good.
Yes. So that was a positive, possibly because of when the timing was, and just a 5% loss, again, possibly because of when the timing is, and to account for a little of that gain. But just to let people know that the water loss that we were previously concerned about has been seriously abated. And so I just wanted to highlight that in case people didn't know and didn't have the background information. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. We don't make water. That's the first thing. So there is an issue with the report, and with a reduced number of staff and a reduced water loss, I would say this group is doing an absolutely phenomenal job.
Thank you. Councilmember Reitz.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Sorry,
Can you
yes,
hear me?
I self-mute my yes. Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I wanted to make 2 points. Yes, I am also very supportive of the Nature Watch, and very excited that we have volunteers who are willing to do this. I think that is terrific. So I am totally supportive of that. The second thing is that I want to, on the leakage, so OpenGov has the capability where we can do measurements, where we can post measurements like on a monthly basis. And as good stewards of our environment, this might be one of those measurements that we want to post on a monthly basis on what our water loss is. So, and then my third point is based on this evening, I'm hoping we're proceeding along with Google Fiber. So, thank you.
Yes, Google Fiber has announced they've already commenced work. They've already went further into their plan. So they had given me a original date of January, so they're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Miles, did you have a question about something in the admin report? You are, I'm unmuting you, but for some reason it's not working. Matt, can you see if you have the ability to unmute Miles Fox? Oh, now I see Miles twice. Let me see if the other one. Okay, Miles, I've unmuted you twice. Can you unmute yourself and see if we can hear you? I have you logged in 2 times. There you go.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks a lot. I had to
There,
switch from
okay.
an iPad to computer, and I'll be brief because I know it's out of sequence. What I wanted to say after Melissa was speaking regarding the signs in the right of way, said I was happy that the policy had been reversed, however that happened. Also to hear all the candidates speaking by, there ought to be some room for political expression in the right of way. But I want everyone to realize I drove this entire community with the exception of Stearns Road and Countrywide, and there probably weren't more than 20, 25 residential lots that had small sign each, or 2 perhaps, in those lots. So it's not a big deal, and I'm glad we'll be dealing with this later on. But one thing in the interim, so that for those people interested, I would like for Sylvia to amend her right-of-way primer, so it does give some information about the ability to permit. And I just heard the discussion that there's nothing in the ordinance that allows that, but I know from experience that I filled out a form when I was selling a lot here in Sunset Valley, and if it's not in the ordinance, it's a practice. And I think that needs to be put into the primer, because if it's happening, and it has been happening for years, it needs to be in there. And the only reason for that is that this may be a way that the candidates and the community can find a means, as Melissa pointed out, of having political signs for a short period of time if they're permitted. If 20 people want to fill out a form saying they'd like to have a sign up for the month of October, and that's it. So rather than wait to this being dealt with whenever it's going to happen after the elections, it'd be great if I could get some information, or the whole community get the information about what was missing from the primer. That's really all I have to say, and I thank everyone for their work.
Thank you, Miles. And I'm actually gonna keep your mic hot in case you want to jump into what I'm about to say. So I had received emails from both you and Melissa, and I had steered clear from responding to your emails, not because I didn't want to be responsive, but for 3 reasons. One, this is clearly a very controversial issue amongst some of the residents, and I didn't want to add to noise or misinformation. So I really wanted to stand by the interview I gave and not try to put out additional information. 2, this is it for me. This is my last meeting as mayor. So similar to the public works director and actually many other things over the last few months, I've been very consciously transitioning things where I know I'm not going to be here when the next set of decisions needs to be made. So on this issue, I really believe it's one that council needs to take up. There has not been a policy change. So to answer, I heard you say that tonight, and it was one of the questions in one of the emails you sent me. There has not been a policy change. In order for there to be a policy change, as the city attorney pointed out, there would have to be a posted agenda item that allows the public to know that council is going to deliberate and potentially make a policy change. So I am not in the next, between now and the election, there's no way I'm going to be giving directives to staff related to policy changes. So this, the right of way, what Roxy produced, what's in the FAQ, until council takes it up, that is the position of City Hall. And as Sylvia said, the way that she is solving it administratively is she will deal with it one-on-one, so only addressing it with residents who do have signs in the right of way, and that she will give them 30 days, which is more than enough time to get past the election and to allow the next council to decide how do they want to proceed. So with that, do you have any questions?
No, I think that's great. I think if
Okay.
who's the one that came with the 30-day window, that's great. It's certainly an immediate solution. But just regarding the semantics of policy change, I mean, there was a community-wide email that said that you had to take down your signs or they would be taken down by the city. And so maybe it's not technically a policy change, but the next thing we knew was that that wasn't going to happen, that was going to be treated differently.
Yeah, the city, yes, correct. So the city is not moving signs, but the message that was communicated, which is according to the city rules, residents should move their signs out of the right of way, that has not changed. But I think the words that you used in an email you sent to me were moratorium. And again, that's not something that's under my authority or Sylvia's authority. So there has not been a moratorium or any sort of a change to city rules. And as I already mentioned earlier tonight, I also believed that there was a process that related specifically to real estate signs where people could request something. And that, truly council, city attorney, and city administrator, they need to review that. And I would say if we do have something that is an administrative approval that's not incorporated into our ordinances, I think the city attorney would agree that is not a practice that we should have. If we're going to have a process, it needs to be built into our ordinance.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. You're right about it isn't a policy change, and it's a workaround, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to the two admin reports that we've had so far? And if not, I'm going to move to the chief's report. Chief, you have the floor. I can see you guys are trying to get the chief stocks up on the screen.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to cover two events on the police calendar. As Sylvia mentioned earlier, Tuesday, November 3rd is Election Day in Sunset Valley over at City Hall. There have been a few incidents at polling places during early voting, and I don't anticipate anything at Sunset Valley. However, the officers have received training on Election Day, election law, and specifically some of the do's and don'ts that occur with enforcement. We've also received a number of intelligence bulletins about possible disturbances that we can expect and how to respond to them. So again, I don't anticipate anything here in Sunset Valley, but we are prepared should something happen. Also, Halloween is next Saturday. This year, due to the pandemic, the department isn't going to host any events or anything like that. But we are still going to be present in the residential neighborhoods and watching out for anything that might occur. I'd like to remind the residents that we are still in stage 3 as far as COVID-19 risk, and that's high risk for community spread of the virus. As a result, I would advise residents against any public gatherings of more than 10 people, and to just try and limit opportunities for others to expose you to COVID-19 in your home by coming to your door or something like that. We still are in stage 3, so there's still a risk of transmission of COVID. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Chief, I had one question that relates to Election Day. Will there be, council members, all of us, I think, if it wasn't clear from what the chief just said, I've heard multiple staff members say to whatever extent we can encourage residents to vote early and discourage them from coming to City Hall on Election Day. That's a very safe suggestion. If we could encourage residents to not come and vote on Election Day, if at all possible. But my question, Chief, is for parking. Will there be anything different in the event that we do have residents that come to vote on Election Day? Are you going to be handling parking any differently?
We're going to make it a one-way from the entrance nearest the police department, one-way entry and exit. You'll enter by the police department, exit over by Public Works. We're going to have more handicap or disabled spaces available. The majority of the parking near City Hall will be handicapped or disabled, but we will have some limited parking. The rest of the parking will be over in the south parking lot of Burger Stadium.
So for any residents who are, speaking or posting or trying to inform residents or people outside of our community, most, in parks, we have limited parking. It will be handicap on site. The rest of the parking will be across the street. And then Chief, you're saying that for the pedestrian entrance and exit also will be one door in, one door out?
Yes, one door in, one door out.
Okay, council members, do we have any questions on the chief's report this evening?
I wanted
And
Chief to
Alex-
touch briefly on, the image that's up on the screen. We've talked about traffic for the elementary. I just wanted him to give a quick 1-minute summary if he could.
Yes, I will. Again, we've moved most of the traffic for the pickup and drop off over at Sunset Valley Elementary to the Master Sergeant Oregon entrance. Right now, there's only about 25% of the students that are attending Sunset Valley. Most of those are second graders and kindergartners, and they will still be dropped off at the front of the school. So occasionally, especially at drop off, you still see what looks like a kind of a busy sort of traffic jam at the front of the school, but the majority of the traffic will be over on the Master Sergeant side, and then everyone will exit either out of Burger Stadium onto 290, or they'll wrap around the stadium back to Jones, but they won't come back on Jones from the school and create that usual traffic jam that we see about 3:10, 3:15 p.m. whenever pickup is occurring. We should be able to eliminate that this year, and that's the plan going forward.
Thank you. And Councilmember Rosengarten, I saw that your hand was up. If you still wanted to speak to the chief's report, if you would please raise your hand. And I see Alice Duffy, did you have a question for the police chief?
I had a comment about we definitely don't want to say don't come to vote on election day. It's totally fine to encourage people to vote early, but we do not ever want to say don't come to vote.
Yeah, so let me clarify that. It's not saying don't come vote. What we're saying is that for the safety of our own residents and our own community, if you have a neighbor, especially if you have an elderly neighbor, or if you have a neighbor who has a family, to any extent possible, please encourage them to vote early, because we do anticipate that on vote Super Tuesday, we're anticipating that we may have greater traffic and greater numbers of people. And to the point the chief made, we have officers who are trying to handle what will be outsiders from our community and do it in the best way possible. So to the extent possible, please encourage your neighbors to vote early. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosengarten, you have the floor.
I was simply going to mention the item that was presented, and Sylvia did that. What Chief just talked about, rerouting pickup at the school.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Any comments on our admin reports this evening? And Chief, while you're with us, just because this will be the last time on that topic of election days or anything else, because we do have quite a lot of residents right now who are posting on Nextdoor and then also through the resident Facebook page, which I know staff members work very hard to not participate in those two social media forums. So one request I would give to the PD is if you have any best practices or recommendations for election day, even if it's a map or something that's helpful to say this is where people will be parking, or if you're walking to City Hall from your home, this is where the entry door is, this is where the exit door will be. Because again, for residents who are used to voting on Super Tuesday, for a lot of us, that's always been a fun part of voting, is to come vote at City Hall. But it will be laid out and manned slightly differently this year, just in anticipation of crowds. So if there's anything else you want to tell us tonight that would be helpful, please do so now. And then anything where you can post it through your official PD Facebook page, I think that would also be helpful.
Yes, we will post it on the Facebook page. This year, we're going to have ample signage and wayfinding signs. We're going to make an extra effort to put a lot more signage out and direction, so that if you walk up, you will instantly know where to go.
Great, thank you. Council members, that brings us to our next item of the evening, item number 4, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Do we have any council members who want to make a motion? Councilmember Rosengarten, your hand is up. You have the floor, but you are self-muted.
I move to approve agenda item number 5. There are 2 sets of meeting minutes, 9/29/20 ampersand and Canales, and 10/6/20, which is the council meeting with corrections. And then agenda item number 6, which is parking issues, and I recommend approving staff recommendations. Item number 9, which is Home Depot tree sale, and item number 10, which is Stearns Lane lots that we visited before. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve on consent items number 5, 6, 9, and 10. Councilmember Medicus, are you our second, or did you have an item you wanted to add or pull before seconding?
I had an item I'd like to add, number 13. And
Would the motion maker add 13?
Absolutely. There's some corrections that need to be made, but I can, they're simply typos, and I can send that by email to staff.
Okay, so then we have a motion to approve on consent item number 5, 6, 9, 10, and 13. We have a motion from Councilmember Rosengarten, a second from Councilmember Medicus. And then now I'm going to go to the other council members to see if they want to either add or remove from that list. Councilmember Ellett, did you want to add or remove from that list? You had your hand up.
Madam Mayor, did you recognize me?
Yes, you had your hand up. Do you want to add or remove that list?
I would add number 7.
Would the motion maker, and let's start with the motion maker. Would the motion maker want to add item number 7?
Yes, I just thought somebody might want to talk about it, but yes.
I would like to talk about that one. So I want to make sure that gets at least some amount of public airtime. So I would ask that we not add that one.
Okay.
Although I think we can do it quickly. Okay, Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to add or remove an item from that list of 5?
As previously mentioned, I want to pull 5 and 6. Well, 5, and I would like to pull 6. 5 is very quick. I just want to add my comments, and 6 is also fairly short.
Okay, Councilmember Gonzalez has pulled items number 5 and 6. So we now have a motion and a second to approve on consent items number 9, 10, and 13. If there are any council members who don't agree with that, if you would please raise your hand. Okay, so with that, council members, if you would please cast your vote in the chat feature, and the city administrator will do a roll call of the vote once she receives your vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Mayor, Councilmember Reeds has her hand up.
Councilmember Reeds? You are, yeah, there you go. Councilmember Reeds?
Yeah, I'm working on this iPad, and I'm having a technical issue on my chatting, so I'm just saying yes, I approve.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, yes. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Ellett, aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We just passed on consent item number 9. Consider and act on a request for 2 temporary special use permits from Peerless Events and Tents on behalf of Home Depot to operate their annual Christmas tree tent sale. Item number 10, act to approve ordinances amending the zoning classification and zoning map for 4800 and 4812 US Highway 290 as previously granted by the City Council. And item number 13, discussion and possible action on the legal review and recommended amendments to the current grievance process in the HR policy manual related to employee grievances and citizen complaints against employees. And it was noted that Councilmember Rosengarten had some typographical, not substantive changes, which she will submit to the city secretary and city administrator to include in that. This now brings us to item number 5. And Councilmember Gonzalez, I'm going to start with you since you pulled that item, if you want to add your comments now.
Yes, Mayor, it's the same statement that I made earlier, that my microphone was cut and at least one resident, Mal Fox, was not allowed to have comment. When I tried to ask for it, I was also told by the city administrator that we'd be allowed to discuss direction from council about including the previous thing that we discussed this time. And I just wanted that noted in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a statement from the council member, because we have that option. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I would like to add the following comment, that although citizen comments are allowed during citizen comments and are also potentially allowed during every single agenda item, it is not a guarantee to residents, and that it is up to the mayor, the moderator of the meeting, and that although the city administrator may say something, if it's something the mayor is not aware of, and so in this case, it was not made aware to me that the city administrator had made any guarantees to anybody about the potential to speak or for the council to give any sort of direction. As far as I was concerned coming into that meeting, there was a mention of the RW issue in terms of the admin report, and it truly was meant to be an admin report of what staff had done. Coming into that meeting, I did not anticipate that we would have any deliberation or discussion or direction. Thank you. Do you have any other comments on the minutes? And if not,
I may.
Hold on. Yes, Councilmember Gonzalez, do you want to add another comment? Councilmember Gonzalez, you are self-muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe you were copied on the transaction that happened with Sylvia, because I generally copy you. So I may add that also. Thank you.
Great, and I will be very honest. I've received many emails from you, so many that I cannot honestly just keep track of them. And with that, I admit my failure and look forward to passing that work on to the next mayor. But again, if the city administrator makes a commitment as to who's going to be called on when, it's going to be hard pressed for me to remember that in a meeting unless the city administrator brings it to my attention during the meeting. With that, do we have? Yes.
Mayor, to that point, I would say please add the email, because I did mention it's in the staff report. But more than that, I'd like the council and the public to go review the video. You gave ample time for consideration, and the item was not sponsored by a council member for this meeting.
Thank you. Do we now have a motion to approve item number 5? Councilmember Reitz?
I so move.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosengarten, are you our second?
Yes, with corrections.
Thank you. Councilmembers, if you would please pull your hand down unless you're wanting to now add comment to that item before we call for a vote. And Councilmember Reitz, I'm going to leave you unmuted since you said you can't use the chat feature. Councilmembers, item number 5, all those in favor say aye. And those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you'd please read the roll call. And Councilmember Reitz, what was your vote?
Yes, I figured out the, sorry.
Oh, great, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Reitz, Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Great, thank you. That now, item number 5 with comments added and edits has been approved unanimously. That brings us to item number 6. Councilmember Gonzalez, you asked to pull this from the consent, so I'll allow you to start if you had comments that you wanted to add.
Thank you, Mayor. We had talked about having surveys be well constructed and and that was going to be an important point. This survey was your survey, Mayor, and created by staff, and it didn't really meet that criteria. So I have concerns about this becoming part of our official record. It was never run by Public Works, and it was never even run by council. This was created really on your behalf and for your item. And so I object to its construction, and I object to it becoming part of the official. I don't object to the actions, and I don't object to these things happening. It's just the way that it happened. I have objections.
Yeah, great. Then actually, why don't I participate in that? Because you're correct. You mentioned that almost as if it's an accusation, but I actually embrace what you just said. I wholeheartedly created this survey, and it was I created it in part because of Lone Oak, because what had happened was it felt to me as if a handful of residents and 1 or 2 council members had decided, let's move forward with some action that relates to parking. There wasn't a concern in itself of doing that, but for me, especially as a resident of the villas, I thought this isn't a good way to do it, because I know we do have other parking issues, including signage issues, including speeding, public safety, lighting. And so you are correct. We did not hire a firm. It did not go through a committee. I did not discuss it with any council members. I truly, as an elected official, said, I want to do a loose survey created by me, and I don't want to use it to create an agenda. I want to use it as a stepping stone to allow council members to know, really to be aware that you do have residents on almost every street in the city. And I tried to create it in a way that was open-ended. And what we now have is really the product I wanted, which is a set of recommendations from staff. So the survey itself, I'm even fine if we say that's not something council's adopting. My goal tonight is for council to approve the recommendations that have been made by staff in terms of what to take action on, what to do research and come back to council for, and the items to take no action on. And I'm hoping that residents have looked at those recommendations. And if you feel strongly as a resident that there's an item that you don't agree with the recommendation, to make it known to council tonight so that that can be discussed. And then I would hope that council, especially the future council, that what they have learned from looking at this survey is there really are a lot of issues that relate to speed, light, safety, where we might need to look at it at a street by street level. But certainly where we don't want to leave it up to a single committee to make decisions, we want to make sure to include the residents so that on a street level, residents can discuss what they think they need for safety reasons. And so with that, what I'd like to discuss is approval of the recommendations or suggestions for amendment to those recommendations by council members. And so what we're looking for is a motion to approve the recommendations from staff. And if not, a motion to approve, then for council members to provide edits as to where they want to change those recommendations. Councilmember Medicus.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would request that we move the screen. The second page is on the screen. If we could move up to the page before this. So we can see the
recommendations.
Yeah. And one thing I did want to say about surveys, I do believe we should have professionally constructed surveys and be really clear about what we're looking to find out. And I would like to see any surveys coming forward. The way this was presented with the yes, no on different streets on different items didn't really give a good sense as to how many people said they wanted lighting or how many people said they thought speeding was an issue. And that would be really helpful to have that kind of understanding about, you know, is it one resident? Is it 10 residents, street by street? So just for future. So I would make a motion that we move forward with the staff recommendations and action that they've listed on the results.
Thank you. So at this point, we have a motion to approve the recommendations as presented in the backup, which does not in any way endorse the survey process itself or the questions in the survey, just the recommendations. Do we have a second? Councilmember Rosengarten?
Second.
Great, thank you. And so with that, it opens it for discussion. And so if we do have, I know at the last meeting, we had residents that were in attendance that wanted to speak to this item. And so again, if you have the ability to see the screen, the only thing that is being approved right now are the 5 recommendations that were made by staff. And so if there are residents that want to speak to that, and then I see that we have, I'm going to put Councilmember Medicus's hand down and Councilmember Rosengarten. So also for the elected officials, if you have additional comments now that we have a motion and a second on the table, if you would also raise your hand. And so my input on this, which is as an elected official, but also as a resident of the villas, I would actually like to see similar to what we did for Lone Oak, and actually maybe with greater detail and more questions. I would like to see a survey presented to the residents of the villas that is very specific to the villas. I think the villas is very unique in that it is one way. It is also extremely narrow. And unlike other neighborhoods where there is an option to pull off the road, we do not have ribbon curbs. And so when you have 2 cars parked, if there's parking only allowed on one side of the street, when you have cars parked on both sides, it becomes impossible to pass. And I use my house as the best example. I live in what's called a garden home. My back driveway backs into an alley. I see it daily. I saw it today, where people drive the wrong way down the alley. And so I don't know that there's anything we can do, but I certainly would like to see the city see if there's a way we can really get engaged with the resident villas. The last time I saw us engage with the villas in a very intentful way was when we put in the pocket parks. And I believe for that, Carolyn may have hosted 1 or 2 meetings. We allowed I think we allowed 3 opportunities for residents of the villas to participate in conversations about what was going to happen in the either 2 or 3, 2 plus the mailbox area, which are these small city-owned spaces inside the villas. I would like to see the city do something similar to that addresses public safety and streets and signage and speed in the villas. And I believe, Michael Moore, I know you were here at the last meeting, so if you want to add anything, if you would please raise your hand. And Lisa Versace, you have your hand up, you have the floor.
Hi, I just wanted to say really briefly that the safety committee might be able to get involved here a little bit on the light in the neighborhoods issue that has seemed to come up on various streets. It might seem a bit counterintuitive, but burglars need lights too to commit the crime. I've read a couple of things about lights creating shadows in places, and that it's actually there's less crime in dark communities. So we might want to do a little bit more research before we start talking even about the need for streetlights in terms of safety and how that relates to our city. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Lisa. Michael Moore, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to say that, we do have a real problem here on the Sunflower Trail in speeding and people going the wrong way, not just the alleyways, but wrong way around the street itself. And we desperately need some speed bumps on this backside, the long stretch where people tend to go way faster than the speed limit even. And speed limit signs don't really do anything. We really need speed bumps. And I know that the staff had said that it was, too expensive or too much trouble to deal with the streets, but that's not the case. I can actually send this little thing out that talks about speed bumps. They're very inexpensive and they slow cars down to 2 to 5 miles an hour. And I think it'd be money well spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments from the public or from council members on this item? Councilmember Medicus?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments. I like the idea of recognizing that different parts of our city have unique challenges and opportunities, and perhaps we could address that by the villas maybe having a focus group that looks at specifically what issues you're dealing with in the villas and do that around our city. That's just one idea. And to Lisa's comment, I just wanted to say there was a lot of research done on lighting by the P&E committee, and there's quite a bit of information that Carolyn probably has in her files that could be shared for researching the safety and what type of lights make the best lighting for safety. So just wanted to pass that along.
Thank you. And then Sylvia, before we call for a vote on this, could you tell us what, and again, I'll take the hit for this not being a perfect survey, but if an imperfect survey means that the villas gets its one-way street repainted and it gets some of its issues addressed, I'll take that any day in a city versus bureaucracy, or well, we can't because we got to wait for a third party to create perfect questions that then go out to the city. I don't want us to turn into a city that can never inquire or reach out to residents because for fear of the question might not be perfect. Sylvia, can you tell us what action has actually completely been implemented since we got the survey results?
Yes, item number 1, moving the doggy waste station, the SVPD increasing patrol, maintenance of trees in the right of way, and the paint for the villas, I believe, has already been ordered. Carolyn, can you verify that?
Yes, I should hear tomorrow from the company who will be doing the painting in the villas on a timeline of exactly when that will be happening.
Thank you, Carolyn. So certainly that would be happening in the next maybe 6 weeks.
Yes, I would be surprised if it wasn't quicker than that.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions from anybody? Last call. Councilmember Rosengarten.
I just wanted to make sure everybody saw Michael Moore's comment. He typed in chat, I disagree with staff recommendation regarding speed bumps. Speed bumps do not require significant street improvement. They can also be glued or screwed down. So just wanted you to know that.
Thank you. I had not seen that, so thank you. Councilmember Medicus, did you have an additional comment that you wanted to make?
Yes, Mayor, just wanted to make clear, because what we're seeing on the screen is really kind of this bulleted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a recommendation above that to not proceed with parking restrictions on any street at this time. And I'm not sure if we're missing any other that aren't on the screen. So I just want to make sure that they're included, that at least that one's included in that list of 5.
Councilmember Medicus, can you remind me, who were you, the motion maker or were you the second?
I believe I was the motion maker.
And who was our second? Sylvia, who was the motion maker in the second, or Matt? I see you're on.
Councilmember Rosengarten was the second.
Okay, so Councilmember Medicus and Councilmember Rosengarten, do you both agree that your motion includes the, and Sylvia, you're scrolling, so can you go back up to where we see? So Councilmember Rosengarten and Medicus, do you both agree that the recommendation includes 1 through 5 plus the bullet that says do not proceed with parking restrictions on any streets at this time?
Absolutely. I went through and read every one, highlighted every one, so I know each recommendation, and I approve all recommendations.
And could I make an adjustment to that wording so that we don't confuse? It's not do not proceed with parking restrictions. It's do not proceed with additional or new parking restrictions.
At this time.
Right. We're not changing anything about existing restrictions. It just means nothing new.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else who wants to add to the comments before we call for a vote? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Hi, Mayor. I'd like to ask the motion makers and the motion makers and the second to consider that Public Works should be discussing the speed bumps, because there's a lot of traffic calming methods that were not discussed, like on the survey, which is one of my concerns about it, and so things like what's being discussed by Michael Moore and other people like that as to whether they really are that expensive, and stop signs and crosswalks. I just think those things should also go by Public Works, and so that anything that's Public Works related, they get to have some input on, rather than staff taking it on.
I'll remind Councilmember Gonzalez, Public Works and Public Safety did discuss this item in early 2020, at some point in 2020. And the recommendation from both committees was on a street by street. Early on, when I first came on, Councilmember Brunner, there was a conversation about how does the street go about implementing traffic calming devices. And I presented opportunities for inclusion of the residents, one of which is there's a petition process that could lead to some city participation. And if the police chief or traffic accidents and those kinds of things are high enough, then it's no participation. It's completely on the city. So we have visited this topic before, and I anticipate we will visit it again with both of those committees. They've not been left out.
Councilmember Rosengarten, you had your hand raised. Did you need to add anything?
Sylvia covered it.
Great, thank you. And so with Michael Moore, I'm going to allow you to be our last citizen comment before we call for a vote.
No, I was actually taking my hand down. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to say something else before we call for a vote?
Mayor, you didn't actually even let them respond to my query.
They're both unmuted. So actually they did. The motion maker and the second absolutely have the ability to respond to you. I cannot force them to respond to you.
Well, I just heard Sylvia respond and I didn't hear anybody say yes or no, and that would be form.
They both have unmuted mics. I cannot force them to respond to you.
Okay, I agree. Our committee should take a look at this. I also like the idea of a focus group specifically for the villas, because I don't think it's just the speed bumps. There's the mailbox and some other issues that, and let's look at this holistically and get some items on our list that can happen quickly, and then what needs to happen long term.
Thank you.
And I will say as the second, I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill, because every time there is some major issue as far as infrastructure, Councilmember Gonzalez, it is always given to Public Works to go through. And if you look in the backup material, it states that we have to go through and do all the infrastructure study before we consider doing speed bumps. So that's without question, it would go to Public Works. Thank you. And yes, that would be the first thing we would do.
You have the floor, Councilmember Gonzalez.
That's fine, Mayor. I just asked to have it considered. That's all I asked. Thank you.
Councilmembers, would you please submit your vote via chat? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please roll call the votes once you have them.
Okay, Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. That brings us now to item number 7. Consider approval of an ordinance to amend the Texas Municipal Retirement System, known as TMRS, updated service credit by reducing it from 100% to 50%. And I asked that this be pulled because I want to make sure in the entire community that we really highlight the amount of savings to the city that is happening through approval of this item. And so Sylvia, if you would give just the briefest summary of this before we approve it.
Okay, cities have a statutory maximum of 13.5%. We would have reached our maximum, and there was a proposal for an ordinance in front of council to remove that statutory maximum, which would have cost us about $50,000. We went back and reviewed with TMRS and made some adjustments to the plan, primarily being the updated service credit, which really only affects executive level or very higher end level. For example, I would be affected if I retired tomorrow. And it is the portion of the calculation for retirement rate. The impact to me personally is about $130 a month, but the savings to the city is over $400,000. So it's a cost benefit that benefits the residents in the city by lowering the overall employment cost and the unfunded liability that the city is on the hook for.
Thank you. And so with that, if there are any council members who want to speak to that, if you'd please raise your hand. If not, certainly we can take a motion. Councilmember Medicus.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Councilmember Ellett, are you our second?
Yes, I am, but I would like to add thank you to the staff. It's very refreshing to see that they come forward with savings and have put their personal gain to the side and acted in the best interest of the city. So I commend them on that recommendation. I do second this.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other comments from the public or from council members? Councilmember Rosengarten.
I just wanted it stated for those who are basically tuning in with their cell phones only. The city staff, Sylvia, saved us $431,696, $50,000 for this year alone. Thank you, Sylvia.
Great job.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
I just have a question if this has any impact on previous employees.
No, and it doesn't have any impact to employees such as Regine who are getting ready to retire.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions or comments, I'll call for the vote now. Councilmembers, if you would please cast your votes, and Sylvia, if you would please read them once you have them all. All those in favor, say aye, and those opposed, say nay.
Okay, Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Councilmember Reeds, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us to item number 8. Consider approval of a watershed variance from Chapter 4 of the Land Development Code at 10 Lone Oak Trail for the development of 118 square feet within the critical water quality zone. And we will start first with a brief presentation from staff. And I'm not sure if that's Carolyn tonight or if it's Sylvia.
It's going to be Carolyn. I'm bringing up some pictures. Councilmember Rosengarten had asked what the impact of the variance would be. So you have the pictures up on the screen. Carolyn, you can go through the text.
Yes, so this is a resident at 10 Lone Oak who is looking to build a pool, as you can all imagine, that people are wanting to have opportunities for things that their kids can do at their home. And so they are proposing to build a pool. The surface area pools do not count toward impervious cover, but the coping does. And so the coping for this pool and spa is basically 118 square feet. The resident is proposing to remove what is about 120 square feet of some random impervious cover, as well as a small parking area that they also have, and revegetate those areas. The resident is also proposing to do a vegetative filter strip as part of that mitigation for being in the critical water quality zone. And the resident is here tonight online with us if we have any additional questions to the actual project, but the recommendation from staff would be to approve this variance as it is not in any way any increase in impervious cover within the area. It's a net decrease of about 2 feet.
Great, thank you. And so for the applicant, I'm not going to require that they speak, but certainly if you want to speak, raise your hand. And if not, I'll move to the first council member. Councilmember Rosengarten, did you have questions or did you want to make a motion?
First, I'd like to see the map that shows the area where the pool is going and the decking. So could you pull that up?
Okay.
There you go. Okay, so with this, I want everybody to know that the only area we're considering is the brown spot in the backyard and then the two blue spots, which are the pool and the spa. The brown spot in the front of the property is not, should not be on this map. That is their carport. That's not changing. Nothing is being added there, etc. It's simply what is on the back side of the property towards your right of the screen. Okay. The black area, is that the previous brown area also? Decking? Is that decking or coping? Because previously, I believe it was all brown. Now it looks like it's black.
Yes, the brown area surrounding the pool is all decking. It's
All decking.
going to be
Okay.
decking that would be considered considered pervious.
Right, because they're doing it per the code. Okay. And what they're doing is they're taking out, mitigating 120 square feet impervious cover. And they're doing a 536 filter strip at the very front of the property. That still leaves them at 16.5% impervious cover on that, on the home side. And with that, I make a motion to approve.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted myself. I was talking. Councilmember Reitz, are you our second?
Yes, I'm seconding.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. And so with that, council members, are there any additional questions or comments on the motion, which is a motion to approve? And then are there any additional staff comments or anybody from the public who wants to speak to this variance? Councilmember Rosengarten, do you have your hand up to speak? If so, you have a open mic.
Yes, I also want to make sure to state that is with the 5 findings. I cannot see them right now and I don't have them written down, but I remember them. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't see any hands up. And so with that, I will call for vote. Councilors, if you'd please cast your vote. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. And then Sylvia, if you would read the vote back once you have it.
Okay. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Reeds, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Medicus, yes. Who am I missing? Councilmember Rosengarten.
I hear doubt in your voice. Would you confirm that that was 5 that you just read that are all aye?
Melissa, Wanda, Phil, Karen. I'm missing Rudy. Oh, aye.
I thought I did it twice already.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. This brings us tonight to, and actually, just to note, it's 8 o'clock, so we have 1 hour left of our regular meeting. Originally, I had planned this night, hoping that we could get through all the items by 9. So council members, I actually think we might be perfectly on track to get through our full agenda this evening, which would include the executive session from 9 to 10. Item number 11, we did time mark at 30 minutes. There isn't any real reason for that other than I didn't perceive us approving, the agenda item is not set up to approve a contract. And so similar to the last meeting, I don't want us to get too far into the weeds. The purpose of this agenda item is to, and I'll allow the other Councilmember Medicus to speak also if she disagrees with this. The goal tonight is to ensure that we have direction on the 2 fund types, hot fund and general fund, and that we provide clear direction to staff so that they can bring a contract back. So again, tonight we're not looking at a contract, we're looking at what terms, words, or information do we want to be included in that contract or those controls for those two fund types. And so with that, I'll let staff do a brief presentation, and certainly Councilmember Medicus, if there's anything you want to add before we open it up for discussion. Councilmember Medicus, you have the floor.
Oh, if staff's going to do the presentation, then I'll just wait. Thank you.
Okay, great. So Sylvia, is there anything that you think would be helpful to summarize in the agenda item as it's presented this evening?
Yes, so the council approved in the budget tentative approval of $10,000 of hot funds due to the condition of the hot fund, and also $21,470 of general fund. Tonight's item, because we have a proposal by SFC and they are on the phone, is truly just the $10,000 for hotel occupancy and direction to staff on the proposal by SFC and the background that's included in the document. SFC has agreed to an improvement of the market as per the council discussion, and then also providing regular reporting to the council in the form of a council presentation. So I will let Councilmember Medicus and SFC add anything they'd like to add. Joy, you are self-muted. And I think Jennifer, I thought I saw Jennifer. Yes, okay. Jennifer and Joy with SFC are here, and Councilmember Medicus, you're also self-muted.
So Councilmember Medicus, is there anything that you want to add to the presentation of the agenda item?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to hope that we move forward with the $10,000 in the hotel occupancy fund, because we already passed new guidelines for that. So that, I believe, can be drawn up and brought back to council. And from everything I've heard about the market, from comments council made and citizens have made over the last couple months, I think what the bottom line is, what it boils down to, is we want a more vibrant market, and that council's interested in supporting that with general funds, since we have this approved amount of $21,470. And considering that most likely we're going to be dealing with restrictions due to COVID-19 well into our 2021 budget year, I think we need to be clear about how we measure success and what success looks like for us for the year we're in, actually, the fiscal year we're in. So I believe that the proposal that SFC has presented, it does that. It sets a goal of a 25% increase in vendor numbers for this year. And I really believe that they have the expertise to deal with the farmers, and don't believe we should really be using our city staff to get in the middle of trying to run a farmer's market. So their proposal does provide a pathway for them to accomplish the goal. It gives outputs that can be measured and they can be held accountable to. And then we've specified, as council is on page 4, or actually on page 2 in the packet under item number 11, we've specified a list of reporting that we want. They've agreed to it. There are 4 items on page 4. So I would like to see staff bring back an executable contract for council to consider. That's a motion.
Thank you. Would you repeat your motion?
I make a motion for staff to bring back an executable contract to the council related to the general funds and in-kind costs. And I guess I'll have to bring back the hot fund application too for council final approval and discussion.
Okay, and so at this point, I'll be looking for, if you're a resident, please lower your hand, because right now I need to look for a second to the motion that was just made. And also I want to confirm that, Matt, were you able to get a clear motion? And then if at all possible, it would be great for the motion to be presented on the screen for the other council members to see.
I was not. I was responding to a question in the chat, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Okay, Councilmember, yes, could you?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
basically the staff recommendation, including the hot fund contract coming back.
Okay, so we have a motion. Council members, would you, if there is a council member who wants to second that motion, would you please raise your hand? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. And so to that, this would be a good time to allow other council members to speak. And again, we haven't opened it to resident comments. So if you're a resident, if you would wait until we get through the council deliberation and wait until we move to public comment. Councilmember Rosengarten.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little sketchy tonight because I do not have all my notes. My notes are on my PC, and we had to rush over here to City Hall. So what I would like for our city to do is to be the city that they compliment. We want to be the ones who are paying or reimbursing their health permits. We want to be the ones who are taking care of their reimbursements for their booths once a month, maybe twice a month, depends. But when I did my numbers, it was only possible to do it once a month. Again, I don't have all my numbers now. So we look at what is the most expensive expense that our farmers have, and that is the health permit. That's $100. Their booth could be anywhere from $35 to $75. So we reimburse their permit. And the reason I'm very adamant about the City of Sunset Valley does it versus SFC, because SFC has two farmers markets. When the vendors get their health permits paid for by SFC, they will say, SFC is fantastic. They pay our health permits. I don't want that. I want them saying, Sunset Valley is fantastic. They pay our health permits. I also want any reimbursements to the farmers to be paid by Sunset Valley for the same reason. They will then remember Sunset Valley, and that will come off their tongue. Sunset Valley did this, and then they will go ahead and tell their friends, and Sunset Valley will get more vendors. Irregardless of who the management company is, it will be Sunset Valley's glory that we have done a good thing to help the farmers out. And that is what I'm advocating for. So I looked at all the numbers, and I took the 21,470, I minused what they needed for, so if somebody could help me along with numbers. If you take the 21,470 minus the porta potty, minus the land lease, that's 8,000 something. I don't see the page, so I can't do the numbers. 8320, I see a little bit on the background. So if you take that amount away from 21,470, it leaves you approximately 12,000. And then if we reimburse 24 farmers for their health permits, that's $100 a piece. That's 2,400. That leaves approximately 10,300 something. You divide that by, how did I do it? By 12, or did I do it by?
There's your information up on the screen.
Excellent. Yes, I did email it to you. Excellent. That's it right there. Gosh, I'm glad I did that. If we pay for 24 health permits at $100 each, that's $2,400. And then we pay $10,498 towards booth fees divided by 12 months. That's $874.83 per month for vendors. So you've got 24 vendors. And where am I getting that number? It's in the backup. Average of 24 vendors that they have year round. That's $36.41, a one-time rebate per month. If we do it, give them a rebate, I don't know what you want to call it, rebate or reimbursement quarterly, that would be $109.35 for 24 vendors. They would get $109.35 back from the city, plus their health permits would be paid for. I think doing it that way, we could grow the farmers market to be the farmers market that we all in Sunset Valley would love to see. I have never said I do not like the farmers market. I have always said I didn't like the third party making all the money and the farmers still aren't getting ahead. Can you imagine how many muffins somebody has to sell to recoup $100, and then every time on a Saturday that they have to pay $50 for a booth fee, how many muffins they have to sell before they break even and start making a profit? So if we do this, and it's COVID year, and we step out and we help them directly, I think the word will spread and our farmers market will be the best in the city. And that's what we all want. And I think that would be a strategy to use. If it becomes too much for staff, there might be another way to look at it and do it in a different program. We talked previously about each vendor would have to be there every Saturday for 12 Saturdays in a row in order to get this reimbursement. The vendors, I have gone into the farmers market and I've talked to them, and they said sometimes that's kind of hard to do 12 weeks in a row because there might be an event they have to go to somewhere else, out of town. Not another farmers market here in Austin, but out of town, or there's a family situation, so they can't just do 12 in a row. But if we say at least 3, what could we come up with? 9 in a row, or maybe not in a row. Out of the 12, maybe they miss 1 or 2. There could be a compromise in there. And this would be the idea that I'm bringing forward to grow our farmers market. Please, if someone has a better idea, please present it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Rosengarten, am I correct that your statements just now, none of that was meant to be a motion, or was there a motion in there?
I didn't think we were making motions tonight.
Okay.
I thought we were giving staff direction to bring a contract back. No motions.
Okay, so tonight, Sylvia, just to clarify, tonight isn't a potential action item, which doesn't mean we have to have action. Could you clarify what the potential action is this evening?
The potential action was to approve the hot fund portion of the contract. The Councilmember Medicus has made a different motion. Her recommendation is to direct staff to go work on a contract as well as the hot fund contract. So there's no approval tonight, but there is a motion that requires staff direction.
Well, that motion died for lack of a second, so we don't currently
okay.
have any motion. Yeah, so right now we don't have any motion, but the scope of tonight is that council can provide a handful of action. I mean, the action is open to council in terms of what direction, what do they want to see come back next. Ultimately, if we are going to release any of the funds that have been budgeted, there has to be a contract connected. To budget it doesn't mean we've spent it. To spend it, we have to have a contract.
Correct.
Okay. And I see I have Councilmember Medicus, Councilmember Ellett, Councilmember Reitz, but before I call on you, I did see Councilmember Gonzalez that you had your hand up first, but now it's down. Would you please raise your hand if you wanted to speak, Councilmember Gonzalez? You have the floor, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Gonzalez, you have the floor, but you are self-muted.
Sorry, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm having a lot of flashing on my internet. It's being strange. But anyway, I have the current number of vendors that we have is how many?
Approximately 24, and Joy and Jennifer on the phone, they can verify.
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So we're at 24, and we wanted to build it like to 25% more or something. I think that was the goal in Councilmember Medicus's. Is that correct, Councilmember Medicus?
That's actually a recommendation by SFC themselves.
Okay. So I was trying to get my mind around what Councilmember Rosengarten was saying, because we want to grow, and so if we're doing health insurance, health permits, how do we not keep doing it? How would we select those people? So I'm going to go ahead and if Councilmember Medicus wants to do hers, I would second hers, because I really don't think that we should be in the business of running a farmer's market. I think that's what's underneath what her statement is. And so I probably would have, if my internet hadn't been doing strange things, seconded her motion. So if she wants to still do it, I'll second it. And I really am concerned because I can see why Councilmember Rosengarten would want to do what she's going to do. But if we're actually building it, then the new people don't get it. And so I would just as soon second Councilmember Medicus's original motion.
Okay, so that motion died. So either you can make the motion and then we can see if Councilmember Medicus wants to second it, or I can circle back around and see if Councilmember Medicus wants to make the motion again. Which would be your preference?
I think my preference is to second it because it's really not my motion, but and
got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Medicus, would you like to make your motion again?
Well, Mayor, let me just ask for clarity. The hot fund, should that be a separate motion or direction? So I'm getting confused between action and direction.
So the way the item was situated tonight, it was ready for action to award the hot fund contract for $10,000.
Okay, so, okay. Go ahead, sorry.
No, and direction to staff on the general fund portion of the funds.
So can I split my motion into two motions then, Mayor?
Absolutely. So you could, and also to clarify, the difference between direction and action to me is the same. Direction preferably is done in the form of a motion, and that way it's very clear to the public that there was a process to the direction. But yes, you could break it into two separate motions, or you could fit it all into one, and we can have Matt type it so that it's very clear to the council members. Your preference.
So then I'd like to make a motion that we bring back the contract for the hot funds, the $10,000 that we approved that.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Council member. Okay. See hands going up and down. Councilmember Gonzalez, I don't think you're trying to mess with me, but every time I go to unmute you, your hand disappears. Okay, there you go. Councilmember Gonzalez, are you the second?
I am the second, but okay. I'm having trouble with the program. It will not stay.
Great. Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and then Matt, just to help us out tonight, Matt or Sylvia, would you please type it looks like we have it there. So the motion is to approve the hot fund portion of the contract. So this is where I would like clarification. What are we approving, Sylvia, based on this? Is it, because we've already budgeted it, so does this mean we are approving a contract tonight, or are we just approving for the final contract to come back to council?
It is the hot fund portion. Council already approved the amended hot fund and the guidelines they'd have to follow, so that's separate and apart. If council so chooses tonight, it would award $10,000 to SFC using the new hot fund guidelines.
So this motion, if approved, it means the money is released. The contract is approved, correct, Sylvia?
Yes, with the new guidelines, which has reporting and reimbursement requirements.
Okay, and that matches the intent of the motion maker in the second?
It does.
Right, okay, so with that, we have a clear motion right now, and so I would look to see if we have first council members who want to speak to the motion that's on the floor, and then open it up to see if there's any public comment. Councilmember Ellett?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, it is confusing. And let me just say, I think all of us, I certainly want to see a very vibrant farmers market. I'd like to go back to the comments that Councilmember Rosengarten said, and I think there's a lot to be taken from that. First of all, when we met, I spoke in a conference with SFC for 2 hours. The number one thing they said to build the vibrancy of the farmers market was to put money in the farmers' hands so they could pay less in rent. We can give them an incentive to stay here. Their proposal coming back, last week we talked, the last council meeting, we talked about making available over $20,000 to go directly to the farmers. Directly to the farmers so they would have an incentive to come and participate in our market here. The proposal coming back from SFC takes that $20,000 and reduces it by $8,000. That $8,000 goes towards SFC's operating costs. So under this proposal, we're actually going to put $8,000 less in the hands of the farmers than what we talked about at the last council meeting. So that's an issue.
Councilmember Ellett, right now, the only motion relates to hot funds. So the motion to approve that is on the table right now relates only to releasing the $10,000 in hot funds.
Okay, I guess what I'm doing is just making a point here and offering direction or suggestions on the direction if a contract is to come back about the remainder of it. So I accept that, but I want to make that point. And again, I would also make the point that Councilmember Rosengarten made excellent points. It is our money. We need to get the credit for that money. We need to understand the people to understand, hey, I got this from Sunset Valley. I did not get it from the other farmers market. And I think that's very important for us. So I just echo what Councilmember Rosengarten said, and I hope that is captured in any contract that comes back.
Thank you. And you might want to circle around and make comments again when we move past this motion, if there's a second motion or discussion that relates to the general funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments that relate to the current motion, which is approval of the release of the $10,000 for hot fund? Miles Fox, you have the floor.
Testing. Can you
Yes,
hear me
we
okay?
can hear you. We can.
Can't.
We can hear you.
Okay. I think it'd be nice to just think of the two sources of funds, hot funds and general funds, independent of one another, but they really are working together in the goals that we seek to attain. So I don't think it's a good idea just to approve the 10,000 if you're not knowing what the whole picture is going to be. I really like Rudy's idea and feel supportive of it, of us giving to the farmers. And I have issue with SFC. You know, are we really enticed with this idea of a 25% increase in vendors when there already is a very low number of vendors? If you go from 24 to 30, it's still a small market. Nowhere in their paperwork or in the staff recommendations do I see any mention of increasing attendance. I'm told by Carla Jenkins that years ago there were 2,000 to 3,000 people that used to come weekends to Sunset Valley. That's part of our city brand. That's part of who we like to be. We're hosts of things that relate to nature. We're good about that, but we're not getting any people there. So those numbers not only need to be verified, but they have to talk about increasing them. Yes, they've alluded to marketing and advertising campaigns without specifying anything of what that's going to be. And now that we don't pay for the marketing and the advertising, they probably feel even more independent to do whatever they want to. They're not talking about how much money they're going to devote to it or not. So in short, I think you need to hold out for the whole picture rather than just releasing the $10,000. And let's take this farmers market from an SFC event, which they've held close under their wing for many years, and make it a Sunset Valley event. And somewhere within discussions, it isn't mentioned here, certainly within contract, we have to have the ability to have signage, to add arts or music events to the event at our expense. But there's nothing here that talks about that. And I know that Joy is very familiar that we want it because she heard us talk about it in the Arts Commission. She must know about other things we've spoken about. So I release it to your judgment, Council, but you have to look at where this whole thing is going to take you. I don't think you can just release the $10,000 and figure that's enough. And then they, of course, they don't even think that that's enough either. If that's the expedient way to go and you know you're going to get the rest of it within the second part of the contract, then please go ahead and do it. But Sunset Valley deserves a real farmers market. Even the Barton Creek on the tarmac at the mall has more vendors there and more choice and perhaps more customer satisfaction. I don't think that people are really wowed by what they're seeing here at the end of Monsignor Horrigan Road. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment for the current motion? The motion is to approve the hot fund allocation from this year's budget, which is $10,000 of hot funds. Do you have any additional comments on that motion? Rob Johnson, you have the floor.
Hello. This is I'm personally in support of giving them the money. I don't know. This is just me talking as a citizen and somebody that uses the farmer's market. I do not know how Joy and company continue to come here and have so many fingers put into their business. Like everyone talks about like everything that they would do with their farmer's market. And the fact is they run it and they run it successfully. I mean, it's there every weekend. There's people, they're selling it. And I think there's like multiple locations of it. And I like to think about what the discussion would be if this was not a nonprofit and so it was like a for-profit company. And I doubt anyone here would be digging into their affairs as much as SFC gets their affairs dug into. Every single meeting I hear, we haven't seen numbers increase, we haven't heard this, we haven't heard this, we haven't this. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't think that there's going to be like 1 million people showing up tomorrow. I always really enjoy that farmer's market, and anyone that has a true problem with it, of course you can come here and say, you know, like we shouldn't give them the hot funds and this and that, but you're also free to go start your own farmer's market, like co-op or, you know, 503c, I forget what the designation is. But man, I just, every time I hear everyone's opinions about how a nonprofit is run that has continued to run the farmer's market for 10 years, I just really, my condolences go out to Joy and company over there. But anyway, that's just me in favor of giving them the money. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment on the motion? And Joy and Jennifer, please do raise your hand if there's at any point during tonight on any of the stuff. I don't, similar to any applicant, I don't want to force you to speak to anything, especially if you feel like something's moving in a direction that's progressive for you. But if either of you want to speak, raise your hand and I can give either of you the floor, especially if you want to correct anything that you think has been stated incorrectly. Lisa Versace, you have the floor.
Hi, in general, I just want to say as a citizen, I support the farmer's market. I love it. It's at the end of my street. It's super convenient. It's great. I think that most people think we can attract a lot more booze, and everybody's acknowledged that. And it sounds like Rudy's got some ideas for incentivizing that. And I love that idea. It really does make a lot of sense. And it did seem like the SFC was not interested in having a pass through because it would somehow complicate the lives of the farmers, but it seems like it would really make their lives a lot better. And I think the analogy of how many muffins a farmer would have or a baker would have to sell to make up for the $50 booth cost makes a lot of sense. I wish there was a way that we could have some sort of a pass through directly to the vendors. That being said, I'm not exactly clear if this doesn't get approved tonight, what that would mean. I'm just a little bit confused by where we're at here.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to take that as a cue to answer to what you just said. So council budgeted 2 separate pockets of money. The current motion will at least release the 10,000, the hot funds, which is the pocket of money. It's a different amount, but it's the same funding source that is consistent with what we have given SFC in the past. So it would allow us to release the portion that is most parallel with what we have provided to them in the past. What that will mean for the general funds is that we might see a second motion after this one passes that gives clear direction as to what council would like to see with regards to the general funds. It will require a contract because in the years that SFC has been here, we have never provided them general funds. So hopefully after we take action on this item, we will then get some sort of input from council members as to what they'd like to see next with regard to the general fund dollars.
So it sounds like this would at least just buy us some time to come up with the second phase.
Hopefully tonight we'll hear after this hot fund portion, we take vote. Hopefully we'll then get more discussion and clarity from council members as to what they'd like to see next with regard to the general funds. Without the contract, the money will just sit as funded but non-released money. So it is imperative that if council wants to spend that money, we do have to create a contract that says, how is that money supposed to be spent? And I saw Carla's hand up, and then I saw it go down. Carla, raise your hand again. Okay, there it is again. Carla Jenkins, you have the floor.
So I just wanted to say that once again, I run two competitive farmers markets with SFC. We work with SFC in a lot of different ways. They support us, they support other farmers markets, other programming in this city that you guys forget to mention, which helps feed people who actually need that help. And I think what you all are doing is, you know, if you do want to run a farmer's market, good luck, because it takes relationships with the farmers, first of all, to make anything at all happen. And I'm speaking from our two markets, average 80 to 100 vendors every single week, Saturday and Sunday, and has for 10 years. So I know what I'm talking about, and I'm telling you that SFC is the group of people that you need to run a successful farmers market. They understand what you're looking for now. Let them do their job and bring you a more vibrant market. Excuse me, market. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reitz, you have the floor. You're self-muted. There you go.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Johnson, his comment about the hot funds. The hot funds, we are legally required to spend hot funds in a very specific way, as in advertising. And the reason we have been working with FSC now is because they were not doing that. They were spending the funds for like microwaves and such that were not legal from our perspective. So that is why we have gotten involved. It is not to get in their business so much, but it is to make sure that we are complying with the legal requirements. The second point I want to make is it is because they are a nonprofit that I do think that they should be very open about how they spend their funds. So I am very supportive of it. I would require that hot funds be spent according to the legal requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody who has not spoken who wants to speak to the motion that we currently have open?
Mayor, I just wanted to remind the council that our change in the hot fund is more of it is still a reimbursement as SFC was doing before, but there are also new reporting requirements. So the hot fund application now has a little bit more bite to it than any advanced reimbursement that we would have ever required in the past or allowed in the past.
Thank you. And Rob Johnson, I see that you have your hand up. Is there something that you would quickly like to add since you've already spoken to this before we call for a vote?
Yeah, sorry. I do recognize that it's, meant to go towards tourism. I mean, but if it was directly for advertising, we would just spend the money on advertising. A farmer's market, we give them money, people come in because they don't have farmers markets in their towns. So, I feel like what I said still kind of stands there. It's just like, they know how to do it. Just give them the money to do it, or they might just tell us, peace, we're leaving. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. And so with that, council members, we are now going to take a vote on the motion, which is to approve the hot fund portion of the contract for the $10,000 that was budgeted, implementing the new guidelines that were approved by council at the last meeting with reporting and new reimbursement requirements. Councilmembers, if you would please cast your vote. All those in favor say aye, and those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read back the vote once you have it.
Councilmember Rosengarten, aye for hot funds. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Gonzalez, aye. Councilmember Reeds, aye. Councilmember Medicus, aye.
Thank you. And so congratulations, SFC. We now are pretty much where we would be this time in all of our past years, which is we've funded hot funds to you and then allocated the guidelines and the release for you to spend that money. Now, council members, for the general fund, do we want to provide any action, motion, direction, something that allows staff to know what to bring back at the next meeting? Councilmember Reitz?
Yes. While I don't really want to get into the business of running a farmer's market, because that's not what I believe the city needs to do, I do like Councilmember Rosengarten's suggestions of being able to reimburse the farmers directly for booth fees. I would simplify it where I wouldn't put the exact dollar amount, because I'm hoping we grow this to at least 30 vendors. And so, and I would suggest maybe a 75% attendance rate, which is 9 out of 12 meetings, and to do reimbursements on a quarterly basis so it doesn't take up a lot of staff time.
Okay, Councilmember Reeds, did I capture that?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And Councilmember Reitz, is this a motion or are you just wanting to put this up for discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second, which would then open it for discussion? Councilmember Rosengarten?
Does the motion include the health permits at $100 each?
I would include that. And there needs to be, let's go back to the amount, a 109.35 max per vendor, I guess is what it would be, right?
Correct.
Okay, yes. So that dollar amount needs to be in there.
I will second it.
Great, and so I'm going to allow Sylvia to catch up so that we have a clear motion.
I'm sorry, what was the dollar amount?
The 109.35.
Exactly the formula that I sent you before.
And so motion maker and second, would you allow Sylvia to add this just so that it is very clear to residents? This is not unlike the previous motion where we were releasing the funds. This is a motion to bring a contract back that would contain these terms or these parameters.
That's exactly correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, Matt is writing his master's thesis on farmers markets and wanted to provide some input based on his academic experience and also having worked in the farmers market for like, I don't know, however 10 years.
Okay, Matt, give me a second and then yes, I will hand the floor over to you. Motion maker and second, does the motion as it's listed provide a clear motion that you both agree with?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to address first the council members that already had their hand up, then I'll move to Matt. And then once we've gotten enough council deliberation, we'll open it to the public. Councilmember Medicus?
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard some good points here. And I think, Rudy, I liked your point about that the recognition for the rebate be given to Sunset Valley. I also think that can be handled in a contract. And also what Rob Johnson said, this is a 501, this is a nonprofit, 501c3 organization. And I've been involved with 501c3s and CEO of 501c3s for over 40 years. And the amount of involvement is interesting to me. And I'm not sure that if I were running this, I would want to deal with this. I really don't think that we as a city council or a municipality have the expertise to know how to best appeal to the vendors at the market. And I also have heard something that I think is really unclear. We want to support the farmers. I keep hearing that, but I also hear we want to grow the market. Well, the market doesn't grow with just farmers. The market grows with value-added vendors also. So are we excluding the value-added vendors in the growth potential for the market and only focusing on farmers? And I think it's two different things. If we want a vibrant market, then SFC has the 10 years of experience to tell us how they can make that happen to meet the goals that we want to see happen. And that may be with value-added farmers. So just limiting to farmers, I think, is not going in the right direction. I think we can get everything we want if we approach this as a grant. This is new territory for us, giving general fund money for support of a nonprofit organization in this way, to the best of my knowledge. And a grant process is the best way, I believe, to go forward with this. And I really don't think we should be using staff time where they could be focusing on utility bills and things that we need for the city, especially in a year when we cut staff, to be trying to manage this. So I really want to implore us to rely on the experts to tell us and to listen to what Carla said, to tell us how they can best accomplish this without us getting into their day-to-day operations. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilmember Medicus, and I'll add my 2 cents at this point and then move to the other 3 council members. I agree with the comments that Councilmember Medicus just made, and then also with the comments that Councilmember Rosengarten and Councilmember Reitz made. The most important thing that I would want to make sure is on the record is that consistently, as I've said, I think at every opportunity I could, I very much support us keeping SFC. I am less concerned with increasing the number of shoppers, and I really want to ensure that we have a vibrant farmers market. I personally shop there. I enjoy it. I don't agree with the comments that Miles Fox made. I do shop at this market, and I don't shop at the Barton Creek market, which was also the market that our city chose not to have here. So if there was an event in the future where they were in our city, even as a secondary market, that's something that certainly we could welcome. That would require them coming to us for a special use permit, and to my knowledge, that hasn't happened. And then Councilmember Reitz, she highlighted this, but also for residents who are listening and to the comments that Rob Johnson made, and Councilmember Medicus mentioned this too, we've never given SFC general funds before, and typically the city has not been in the practice of giving general fund dollars to support a nonprofit. And so, as some may perceive it as us wanting to get involved in their operations, that certainly is not my goal, and that was not my goal in putting forward the idea that we provide them general funds. My intent was more in line with what Lisa Versace said. It was that I want to find, and even what Councilmember Rosengarten said, I want to find a way to have farmers say, we want to be in Sunset Valley because they are the best city at most directly supporting those of us who vend. And when I say farmers, I actually mean vendors. So whether it's a baker, a farmer, an artisan, I would like for people who want to be at a farmer's market to say we want to be in Sunset Valley because it's the cleanest, it's the safest, it's the friendliest, it's the easiest one for us to get in and out of, it's the easiest one for buyers to shop, it's the most stroller friendly. Oh, and bonus, the city itself does everything they can to support us choosing their location. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Medicus, that's really it. I really want to say pretty much everything she said. I think that we should stay out of the business of trying to run a farmer's market, and I think that I think it's been really messy listening to us do this. So, and I don't know that it's productive. I think we set the parameters where we say, okay, we'd like this to grow. Our grant is contingent on this growing. We're going to try this for a year. And if we're not successful at it, then we reevaluate. That's our business, is to say what the parameters are, what we want to do, and you know, what the consequences are if we don't, and we reassess. So, so I agree with what Carla said. I agree with what Karen said. Thank you.
Thank you. And Joy, I'm gonna, since you're representing SFC, I want to allow you to jump in, and then if you'll unmute yourself, Joy. I lost Joy. There she is. Joy, you're self-muted. Can you unmute yourself? Great. So Joy, if you want to jump in, yes, we can hear you. And I saw that your hand was up, so I didn't know if you wanted to jump in and either say something or correct something before I move to the next council member. Joy?
Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear
Okay.
us?
Yes.
Okay, did you want to add something before I move to the next council member?
No, I'm happy to have all the council members speak, and then I'm happy to speak after that.
Okay, then what I'm going to do, Joy, is if you'll just self-mute yourself, and you can unmute yourself and interject if you want. And if you don't want to interject, if you'll raise your hand, I'll recognize you so you have either option available to you. Councilmember Ellett, and then I have Councilmember Medicus after you. Councilmember Ellett, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I am actually just trying to get a handle on the motion here and get some understanding. So it's to the motion maker. First of all, the motion, the reimbursement, is the motion maker saying that will come directly from the city? Number one. And number two, would the motion maker on this be prepared to include not just farmers for this incentive to come here with some type of compensation for booth fees or permits? Would the motion maker and the seconder on that agree that it could be all vendors?
Motion maker and second, you both have the ability to speak to ensure that the motion fits with the questions that Councilmember Ellett's asking.
Yes, I would include all vendors. And actually, I might want to expand this to include the land rental and the portable toilets. I had to pull up my phone to see what that was. To the motion from the general fund, if Councilmember Rosengarten will agree.
Yes, my math included paying for the land rental and for the porta potties, and we can pay that directly to SFC, but then the reimbursements was to be paid directly to the farmers. And yes, I just used the word farmers because it's a farmers market. So I meant anybody who's at the farmers market. And more times when I counted on the vendors, they were 19. So if we grow 25% and it's five new vendors, we're at 24, which is the number I used for the math. Thank you.
Staff, could you include all of that in this, what we're viewing, which is motion to bring back a contract that would contain these terms? One is payment directly to SFC for the rental fee, which is a rental fee that is implemented by AISD. Two is payment of the porta potties. And again, that is payment directly to SFC, not to the vendor that provides that service. And then the third and fourth are the farmers booth fees, and it would to ensure that it includes all vendors, not just the farmers.
I believe we may have some health permits too in there.
Yep. So I feel like we should have four bullet points. Bring back a contract that would contain these terms. One, payment of porta potties directly to SFC, payment of land rental directly to SFC. 3 is the reimbursement of health fees and vendor fees, and those last 2 is directly to the vendors.
And I apologize, this was your motion. I just mentioned what I was thinking previously. Sorry.
No, that's good. Thank you.
And so for the motion maker and the second, and this goes to what I've heard from some of the other council members, is the idea that the reimbursement is that we do this, sort of to the point that Councilmember Gonzalez made, is the idea that the terms would say, we're going to do this, we're going to release these funds with the hope and the goal that we meet whatever that increase is, or is the increase a requirement of getting the funds? In other words, do we approve it and give it a year and then check back in, or do they have to actually meet some sort of a goal before we release any of these funds?
I am okay with releasing the funds without any requirements in that sense. I think this is kind of a new ground for us where we're working together to get this market improved, and that's sort of the way I'm approaching this. So that's my opinion.
I would agree.
Okay, and so Sylvia, it might be helpful in that first bullet, reimburse vendors for booth fees. How is the language to allow for growth of 75% attendance? Can either the motion maker or the second, is that a helpful addition if that's actually not a requirement?
How about reimburse vendors for booth fees up to $109.35 if they have 75% attendance rate done on a quarterly basis?
Okay. And so Councilmember Ellett, does this answer your questions, at least in terms of what motion is being made? And this is not to approve this, it's to put these terms into a contract, which would come back with the new council for additional deliberation and final approval.
Yes, and I thank the motion maker and the seconder for that clarification.
Thank you. And so with that, to the other council members, now that the motion has changed, is there anything that Councilmember Medicus or Councilmember Gonzalez believe would be helpful in this motion and direction for contractual terms? Councilmember Medicus?
Again, I just have to say, I think this should be handled as a grant, and us using our staff time to get involved in the reimbursement. SFC's proposal lays out a plan for how they believe it will attract more vendors to the market. And I don't have enough expertise or any expertise in running a market and know what would be attractive to vendors. So I think this kind of is messy and not a good use of our staff time. So I'm not in favor of it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, do you want to add anything? And the motion maker and the second, you both have the ability to mute and unmute yourself as council members are discussing this. Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to add anything?
I think that it would be to add it as a grant, and as Councilmember Medicus said, I would be opposed to it otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, and so for the motion maker and the second, we have two council members that are suggesting that the contractual terms be positioned to be more of a grant, not more of, to be a grant versus, and Councilmember Gonzalez, since you still have a hot mic, you're speaking specifically to those first two items. And Sylvia, could you bullet list those with numbers so that we have 1 through 4? In terms of it being set up as a grant, the toilets and the rental already achieve that. Am I correct? It's really those two reimbursement items where you're speaking to Councilmember Gonzalez that you would like those two to be done differently.
That's my suggestion, Mayor. I think if they wanted to pass, there are two votes that are saying
right.
that would be our preference.
And so the motion maker in the second, would you like to discuss or change anything about the motion in terms of how it's set up as a grant in relation to the first two items. And Sylvia, it looks like we have directly to vendors. That should, yeah, thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, so if I can respond to this, and yes, this is messy and it's not ideal, but I have to remind everybody how we got to this position. And we got to this position because we were not focusing on how the FSC was spending our hot funds that we allotted to them. And so we do need some focus. And I think a year of focus is not a bad thing. And if we may find that, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work, but you know, it looks like the work would be basically cutting 120 checks, which I believe can be done. I don't think that's a huge amount of time that would be required for that. But I would like to see what happens. Maybe this will be a total bomb and it's like, oh my gosh, but maybe the market may thrive. And this is new ground. I would like to try it.
Okay, and council members, we are now at 9 o'clock and this was set for 30 minutes, which we have exceeded. So what I would ask for at this time is that we first vote on this motion and then that we get a motion to extend the meeting past 9 o'clock. So we can't do the second without the first since we have a motion that's open on the table. Charles Goyette, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, hello. I do have just a quick question on item number 1 in that list. 75% attendance rate, and then you have done on a quarterly basis. So that would assume that for each quarter, 75% of the events that fall in that quarter are required to be attended in order for that reimbursement check to be received, right? I mean,
Correct.
it's going to be intimately tied to the quarter, to each and every quarter.
Yes.
Okay. So someone could have a perfect attendance record for quarter 1. Quarter 2, they could, like, let's assume there's 12 events in quarter 2 and they only meet 8 of them. Then they're not going to get their reimbursement. Although for those 2 quarters combined, they do meet the 75% attendance requirement.
Yeah, I don't want to make this too complicated.
Well, I mean, it's just a technical question. I mean, it is or it isn't. You know, you gotta be specific.
And I am 75% attendance rate for the quarter.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Thank you. And then to that, my question for the Enjoy, I see that you're there, and Matt, I know you're also were wanting to speak. 109.35 is not the total; it's reimbursement of that amount per event, correct?
Per vendor.
Per vendor.
Per quarter.
Per Saturday, or that's the total they can get per
quarter.
Okay. So again, just when we come back with the contractual terms, Sylvia,
yes.
Roxy, that needs to be super, super clear, not just for SFC, but for council members and then also for residents who are going to need to be able to read and understand this. Joy, you can unmute if you'd like.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to just go over kind of several points, kind of touching on different things that I've heard this evening. So last council meeting, we had a discussion, and what was difficult is that, and after that discussion, SFC met with Sylvia to basically put forth our proposal for how we think this would best be executed and operationalized. And so that is what is included in the council member packet. And that's the agreement that we came to, because based on last council meeting suggestions of reimbursing the vendors in such a way that they come to 75% of the events in a quarter or something like that, that in the proposal that we don't feel like as folks who've been running a farmers markets for 20 years, not 10 years, but 20 years of experience, that is just not going to work. If you have a farmer, to Rudy's point, who goes to see a sick family member, or their crop gets wiped out because of a freeze and they miss that next weekend, and then all of a sudden they don't get that reimbursement at all. I don't see that as an incentive for farmers in that way versus the way that we laid it out in the original proposal. So that's the first point I wanted to make. In terms of the percentage increase that we proposed, there's about an average of 24 vendors right now, and we're proposing to go up to 30. That is based on two things. One, that's what we think is feasible in COVID right now, but we also are very well aware that all the experts out there are also warning that we could backtrack with COVID, and there could be restrictions put in place by the city of Austin or by the health department or by Travis County that could make us retract. And so an example of that is there have not been as many hot food vendors at the farmers market, because part of that is we really wanted to create more of a space for people to come get their grocery shopping done and leave, as opposed to more of a hangout space, how it's been in the past. And so if we were to recruit, for example, 3 new hot food vendors right now, and then in 6 weeks, we end up going back to more stringent restrictions where we're not allowing people to consume any food on the premise, that start and stopping of vendors is difficult. And so that's why in terms of our proposal, we put forth that we're at an average of 24 and we want to get it to an average of 6. We think that is doable with COVID, but we're going to see how that plays out. In terms of additional vendors beyond that, someone made this comment, and I don't recall who, but it absolutely is, you've got to have resources to give vendors. Vendors don't fall out of the sky. And the plan we have put together, both for you guys at the proposal as well as part of our operations for this year, is based on our current staffing levels and our current amount of resources that we have in the budget. So I just want to make clear that if the current number of vendors is 24 and City Council is desiring a market where there's 80 vendors, that is going to take considerable amount of resources. And we as an organization have not budgeted that. I don't believe that Sunset Valley has budgeted that either. I think in terms of what a successful market is, I've been hearing for the past several months different ideas of what success looks like. And I think that when I've shared this with Sylvia and other council members upon request, that when you look at our vendor satisfaction rate, when you look at our customer satisfaction rate, when you look at our sales numbers, they're all the sales numbers are up this year, this past fiscal year for us, even despite COVID. The vendor satisfaction is very high, as well as the customer satisfaction is very high. And so when someone is saying that the market is poor or we want a better market, I think it would be helpful to know, when you say you want a better market, what does success look like? And to that end, in our proposal, we said what we can do this year, given the constraints, given COVID, given what's laid out from the general funds that Sunset Valley is considering putting towards the market, is an increase in a 25% increase in vendors. In terms of asking, so anyways, I'll take a pause there, but the thing then getting into, I think, the nitty gritty, and I think this was pointed out by Charles Goyette's comment, this is very complicated. And this is one of the reasons that we put forth our proposal, because we've been working with farmers in markets for 20 years. We know what works for them, and we feel this is the best way to provide the reimbursement to them. We, after every market, when a farmer pays a booth, we provide them with a receipt to show them that they've paid, that there's a paper trail there. And so rather than pay the farmers directly, or rather than reimburse the farmers directly, Sunset Valley, I would like to go back to, I think, Councilmember Medicus's comment that there is absolutely a way we can recognize Sunset Valley in our reimbursement of booth fees. In fact, we have precedent of this, as I've mentioned before, when we have had chefs or certain restaurant groups cover the funds for certain months of the year. And the farmers absolutely know when it's cold outside, and in January is a rough month to come to the market. They know that such and such restaurant is covering their booth fees for that month. We make that absolutely clear in our communication. And so I think what I would say is that if Sunset Valley wants to directly reimburse the farmers, both for the booth fees and for the health permit fees, then we would ask that you do that separately from this contract. And that would be up to Sunset Valley interfacing directly with the vendors themselves for those reimbursements. But that should not be part of our contract, as we have no way of enforcing that or being held accountable for any sort of metrics related to that when we're not involved.
Okay, thank you, Joy. So before we do any more comments, I'm going to say this. We capped this at 30 minutes. We are very, very beyond that. This is not a final contract. This is to provide direction so that the next council and so staff knows what to do in between now and the next meeting with the new council, which will be in November. So if there are council members who want to make very brief comments, and then I'm going to call for a vote on the current motion.
So I would like to clarify something. Joy, you are saying that you will not provide us a list of vendors who achieve 75% attendance rate per quarter?
If the money, if we are not involved in the reimbursement, then I see that as a direct relationship with you and the vendors.
So I understand what you're saying, Joy. What you're saying is if we're going to do direct reimbursements, that you don't want that to be part of the contractual terms. But I think what Councilmember Reitz is asking is, are you going to report attendance to us regardless of what's in? I mean, are you still going to be able to at least report the attendance per week or per month?
I would say no, because that's not part of this contract. We've put out how we want to count attendance and report that back to you on a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis.
Well, it sounds like we're starting over, and which is a shame. I really want to give money to you guys, and I would be a really big champion of this market. I'm really excited about some growth potential here. And the fact that you would not be willing to provide us a list of that, of vendors who come each week is surprising to me.
So let me, Councilmember Reitz, if I may ask, so if we provide you a list of who comes during a month, what is the plan of action, and who does that fall upon within Sunset Valley to then reimburse those farmers? And if those farmers do not contact you to get the reimbursement, is SFC then held accountable because those vendors didn't claim the reimbursement?
Well, it sounds like it's a simple form that needs to be completed by a vendor on where payment is to be made. And it's a simple quarterly or monthly report done by FSC on who was there.
And I think in our proposal that we put forward, that is exactly what we did. We said, this is how we propose going about providing that information to Sunset Valley. And that's exactly what we proposed.
So we're going to stop now. Joy, if you would mute yourself so that we don't get deeper into what's becoming a debate. It doesn't seem like there's consensus, similar to the last meeting. There's not consensus within council And SFC is also clearly still communicating that they don't completely understand and or agree with what we're proposing. And again, what we're proposing is not a contract, it's potential terms to be put into a draft of a contract. So at this time, I think we need to, Sylvia, if you could put the motion up, and Matt, I absolutely think that residents and council members need the benefit of your knowledge, not just because you've worked for the city and you've worked for, but you've also done work at SFC and now you're doing your master's research on this topic. That might be something that would be helpful for us to build into the next meeting so that we actually give you time. And maybe even between now and when this shows up on a council meeting, if you could even provide your brief thoughts to council members in writing, that would probably also be helpful. But council members, it's now 9:15. We do have a motion on the table, and so at this time I'm going to call for a vote. Council members, if you would please cast your vote. The vote is a motion to bring back a contract that would contain the terms that are listed bulleted 1 through 4. That would allow for additional input and deliberation. Councilors, if you'd please cast your vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please read the vote back once you have it.
Okay. Councilmember Reitz, yes. Councilmember Gonzalez, nay. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Ellett, aye. Councilmember Medicus, no.
Okay, the motion passes, which is just to bring back terms. And so for the 2 council members that voted nay, and for residents that are in the room, and even for people who have texted me and emailed me in the last 45 minutes, I will not be your mayor when this comes back. But between now and when this is on a future agenda, it gives SFC additional time to communicate with council members. It gives council members to actually start to see draft terms in a contract that's been put together. So to actually see 4 corners of an actual document produced by our city attorney. And from there can be additional deliberation and discussion on what's acceptable and then also how it would be implemented. And so with that, council members, do we have a motion to extend past, we're already past 9 o'clock, but do we have a motion to make that official? Councilmember Ellett?
I would make that motion.
Councilmember Reitz, are you my second?
Yes.
Thank you. Council members, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
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 And Sylvia, do you have a vote from Councilmember Medicus and Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes, they were nay.
Okay, so we are, we've already extended.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, to extend past 10 o'clock.
Okay, great. So we have a unanimous extension.
Oh.
We are now at, yes?
Oh. Councilmember Gonzalez has a nay. I'm not sure if that's a nay to not extend or that's a nay for the contract. Councilmember Gonzalez, will you please clarify? Councilmember Gonzalez is.
That was a nay to extend.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Medicus, was her vote to extend yay or nay, just so that we have it recorded properly in the record?
Yay. It was yes.
Yay. Okay, so we do have a yay from 4 council members to extend and 1 nay from Councilmember Gonzalez. Council members, I'm now looking for a motion to take us into executive session. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Ellett and Councilmember Reitz.
I would make a motion to move us into executive session.
Councilmember Reitz, are you our second? Councilmember Reitz, you are self-muted. Are you our second?
Yes, I am.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Okay, thank you. Council members, if you'd please cast your vote, and Sylvia, if you'd please read it back. This is a motion to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And Sylvia, if you would please roll call that once you have everybody's vote.
Okay. Councilmember Rosengarten, aye. Councilmember Gonzalez, nay. Councilmember Reeds, yes. Councilmember Elliott, yes. Councilmember Medicus, yes.
Okay, so we also have 4 council members voting yay to go into executive session and Councilmember Gonzalez voting nay. We are now moving to executive session, and so Sylvia and or I lost Matt. Matt, you are also unmuted. If either of you have special instructions for council members to follow for the breakout session, please provide them now.
Yes, Matt is going to create a breakout session. He will move the council into the breakout session. I will not be in the breakout session. I will be invited in when you guys are done concluding. Mayor, I sent you a document. I'm going to send it to Matt to go ahead and share on the screen.
Thank you.
So Sylvia, we're not doing the Google Doc.
Yes, you are, but I need to send it to you for Google Doc.
Okay.
And Roxy, was there something you wanted to add also before we move in to the breakout session?
Mayor, I didn't know if you needed me available in the executive session or on the side. I didn't know if you wanted me in there or outside.
No, we need you in.
Okay. So Matt, just so you know that you need to move me in there too.
Yes, you are in the breakout. Just council members, you're going to be placed in breakout B. The rest of the audience, I don't think anything will happen. You might see breakout A, but hang on one moment. I need to upload this document and then I'll begin the breakout executive session. Just a note to council members, I have not started the session yet. I'm trying to upload a document that was just sent. Just one moment, please.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go into breakouts again. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Again, there will be no documents on the screen this time. Council, you will still be in breakout session B.
Okay, Matt and or Sylvia, can one of you confirm that you're able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, and so for people who've waited, we're not taking any action. And in fact, we weren't able to get through our executive session. So the two items that were listed, two separate executive session items, those will both be posted. Again, we're posting a meeting for next Tuesday, which was a called meeting for marketing purposes. We will expand the scope of that meeting to include an executive session that will cover the same two items that are listed tonight. So exactly as you see things worded tonight, you will see that worded again on the agenda that posts later this week for next Tuesday. And so with that, we are looking for a motion
Mayor,
to
we also
adjourn.
have item number, the dashboard, the green space dashboard that wasn't heard. So that one will be placed back on the agenda as well.
Yes, so since we're at a time certain stop, we don't even need to table that because we are required to close the meeting. So item number 12, which we did not get to this evening, that and item 14 and item 15 will be listed on the meeting that we schedule this week. Is that correct, Sylvia?
Yes.
Okay. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Medicus, are you the motion?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Okay, and then do we have a second? Councilmember Rosengarten, are you our second?
Yes, it looks
Okay,
like
great.
we're ready out the door, maybe.
All those in favor, say aye. And if you're
Aye.
Aye.
Bill says aye.
Aye.
okay, thank you very much. It is 10:12 and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.